I am your moderator, Dr. Evelyn Mulwa, stepping in for Dr. Brenda Obondo. Tonight we have a rich program that includes a curtain raiser from Tiba Insurance Agency, as well as a speaker who has been here before speaking to us on personal finance and investment. I'd like to point out a couple of things. Please note that this is a CPD accredited webinar. I know it's crunch time and that time of the year where we may still be looking to plug in on some of our CPD points. So this event is CPD accredited, can commence with the webinar. So welcome to the webinar. We shall start with a curtain raiser by CPA Zebi Onam from Tiba Insurance, that is wholly owned by KMA Sacco. He shall be speaking to us on the matter of professional indemnity, which, as we are aware, is topical for this time of the year. Not only does the Medical Council require us to renew our licenses with active professional indemnity covers, but also there is a legal requirement that medical practitioners actually have active professional indemnity covers. So with that, I'd like to invite Zebi Onam to speak to us on professional indemnity covers.
Thank you very much. Good evening, members. My name is CPA Zebi Onam. I will take you through the professional indemnity cover, which is very crucial for many doctors in the country. First of all, let me introduce Medifinance Limited, which is fully owned by the KMA Sacco. Medifinance Limited is the investment arm for the Sacco, which deals with both the investment and the insurance under the Tiba Insurance Agencies. The scope of the cover, that is the professional indemnity, the legal liability as a result of the errors, omissions, and acts of negligence. This means the professional indemnities will cover you on the legal liabilities as a result of errors, omissions, as well as the acts of negligence on the part of medical practitioners within the medical profession. Now, for the list of members or other people who should take up the professional indemnity cover, we have 5 lists of people. The major ones are the doctors, then we have the dentist, the pharmacist comes third, nurses, and also clinical officers. Now, for clinical officers, I understand most of them do not take it like it's mandatory, but I will tell you, in case of anything within your profession, this cover will really help you. So for clinical officers, kindly I request you to take this PI cover very seriously. Next, I'm going to talk about the benefits of the PI cover. As you can see, the reason for insurance actually is to prevent you from any future danger. But even at that, you need not to use any finances to cater for those dangers. So the first benefit is the compliance with the license requirements. So the license requirements requires the professional doctors and all the list have listed to take up the cover. Whether it's a new policy or if you have it, it's required you renew it each and every financial year. The second benefit is for financial assurance. As I had talked about this earlier, it covers you against the court awards and the legal fees. If we talk about the legal fees, we actually mean if you have any omission, any errors, and you've been sued by the board, then that means we will take up all the processes of making sure you don't use any of your financial, from first providing you with a lawyer, providing any finances that may be needed by the court upon their decisions. The third benefit is the peace of mind. This allows one to practice without any fear also the financial losses in case of any events. And the last one, it enhances employability. This means most employers, or rather all employers within the professional body, requires the employees to have the PI, or rather professional indemnity cover. So will 15A requires all the practitioners to take the professional indemnity cover. So this is, like I said earlier, it's a very crucial policy, and I will request each and every member to take this policy through TIBA Insurance Agency. Next, get the professional indemnity cover for as low as 6,036 through TIBA Insurance Agency. 636 is a good premium quote for us, and this is majorly for doctors who are the KMA members, or rather the non-KMA members. So please take it up. Now, for the TIBA insurance agencies, we have partnered with the 4 major insurance companies that provides the professional indemnity. The reason why we have chosen the 4 is because, like I said earlier, the main purpose for the insurance is to cater for any future danger. So I assure you that these 4 insurance companies will cater for your danger. Number 1 is the Heritage Insurance Company. Number 2, we have Britam Insurance. Number 3, we have Madison. Then Old Mutual, which was being called UAP. It changed its name to Old Mutual Insurance Company. Now, these are our contacts. You can reach us through our mobile phones. You can send us an email. You can visit our website. Everything is posted there. Or you can visit us physically at our KMA Center offices in Upper Hill. Thank you very much. I will welcome all the questions in the Q&A, and we will respond them there. Thank you and have a good evening.
So thank you very much, Zebi, for that introduction. As stated, TIBA Insurance Agency is 100% KMA Sacco owned, and therefore, is aligned with the doctor's need, which, as stated, there is now both a requirement from our council as well as a legal requirement that we actually have valid professional indemnity covers. So thank you for that. However, we'll be taking the Q&A at the end of this particular session. So if you have any queries relating to the professional indemnity cover, kindly post those in the Q&A tab and we shall address those queries. We shall be proceeding to tonight's main function, on personal finance and investment. And our speaker tonight is not new to the SACCO. He has been a speaker before in the past, and I personally have learned a lot from him. He's Patrick Wameo, who is a self-driven small business advisory and financial literacy consulting practitioner with over 28 years of extensive operational and strategic business management experience. He has distinct experience in providing personal financial planning and business advisory services involving business strategies transformation, sandwiched with capacity building to the SMEs, SACCOs, finance banks, and also commercial banks. He has, over the last 16 years, demonstrated strengths in providing small business advisory services, credit risk management advisory, institutional capacity building for SACCOs, for microfinance banks, and also in personal finance planning, goal management planning, and career transitions training and coaching. He's board chair at Pacemaker International and also a director of Kenya Association of Investment Groups. So we have a capable speaker for the topic at hand. Mr. Wameo, kindly, the floor is yours, and please share your screen.
Thank you. I'll be live in a few minutes. Please confirm that my screen can be seen.
It can be seen. Kindly put it in slideshow.
Yes, it's just rolling. We
Yes,
are
it's
there.
visible. Yes.
With this East African Standard Time, 17 minutes after 7, and I guess we have about up to 8, 10, 20 to wrap up this. I'll be focusing more of the weight of the plan on the investment side, but I'm also sensitive to the fact that there are people we are meeting for the first time. So I'll kind of summarize the discussions we've held before that formed the bigger part of the foundations of financial literacy, because if you want to talk investment, then there are things which you ought to have learned. So I'll spend about 30 minutes or less on that and spend the balance of time on the investment aspects, which have been given an equal weight in this particular session. So my name is Wamea, and the rest is history. I decided to break it down into 4 sub-contents. One is budgeting for results and then keeping track, because last time there are a number of questions coming from that, which did try to indicate that there are people who are struggling. I have brought in the small element of how to navigate the cost of living during these periods of crisis, regardless of your sources of income. The government is also seriously collecting a bit of it, so what you are used to consuming is no longer available. As a by the way, just strengthen family finances and effective money communications, not because I will discuss those topics in detail, but because what I will discuss in the first 2 should enable you to improve your family finances, and more importantly, to engage as a couple on a platform that is uniform and easy to understand. And as I said, spend most of the time discussing the investment subject, especially the execution. And God willing, including during question time, we may have to look at an overview of retirement planning, because investments usually are supposed to lead you to a comfortable retirement. I would love to link the 2, but if I can't link it because of time, there shall be time in future. Now, from the psychology of money, I've put together 8 summary points that are crucial for anyone who desires to make a change in their financial life, so that should someone leave this meeting after just about 10 minutes, what are the few things that they will take home? I've got 8 points that I have summarized from Psychology of Money that basically covers everything we will be discussing. Number 1, financial success and behaviors are linked, which means the person has to self-manage themselves. You are not, it is your behaviors that you spend money on. Number 2, financial success comes from controlling emotions. I'm in the Ngong Hills, and today I don't know why it's raining a bit here. So just in case I'm low, let me know. Financial success comes from controlling emotions. So you cannot pride yourself on them cheap talk. You try to make something carelessly. You are basically saying, I am not walking the path of financial success. So you must fight your emotional and mental turmoil to make good choices. And then good choices are financed. There shall be good results. So engaging in a fool's pursuit is actually a sign of losing the emotional war, which is not good for your numbers. I say this with a lot of respect 7 years in the university, I only took about 4. So when I say that engaging in a fool's pursuit is a sign of losing the war, I have seen a few people lose this war. We acquire articles to gain cars, respect, big cars, big world, name them. But then they don't gain that respect because the people admire articles, not the owner. Because they too would require some money to buy articles. Could you just think about how your life would look like after 65 years of age, vis-a-vis the fire of the moment? Number 6, you need not risk what you already have for things you don't have or don't need. So we would urge you to take calculated risks. Take risks, but informed risks. Number 7, there are many ways of making money, but only one way of keeping money. That one way is by being frugal. Lastly, or second last, take risks because it pays in the long run. The and investing is every investment has an element of a gamble in it, but that depends very much on the level of understanding of the investment you are purchasing. And lastly, risk and luck live side by side. You actually increase your luck by taking and learning from risk. But the world is too complex for your actions to be dictated 100%, or to dictate 100% of your outcomes. So there has to be some element of luck. For example, if you acquire property in an area that eventually becomes and was not going to become anything by the time you're buying it, it is luck that came along to drive the value of that asset earlier than it would have been. So sometimes we invest based on information, but many times we also invest based on half-truths. Some of them come to pass, some of them never come to pass. So just a bit of a picture from the psychology of money to help those who are meeting us for the first time, because I will not spend a lot of time in the first half of this webinar. I only have 1 hour, and the first half can be very long. And I wanted to find a way of summarizing it so that when I speak about a few things before I go into investment, we don't lose it. So what I've said about money and behaviors is about socialization. Basically answering the question as to why do I do things the way I do them? Why are you different? Why do you find yourself risk averse? Why are others better takers? Is it that some people are born taking risk? No, we learn. We have to depart from our socialization through slow and small steps of learning. That is what financial literacy is about. Financial literacy is one of those applied skills. It is not straight from the guts of the books. You cannot read money and understand and make money. You've got to read money and practice, then learn how to take those risks in a very short while. Even the very risky forex trading makes money for people who have persisted long enough to understand what drives the value. I've discussed, without saying many things, the place of nurture and nature in our lives. Just to clarify that we are raised of parents, of grandparents, and of a wider family. That is what we call nurture. And those guys pass to you every you got to depart from some elements of your socializations to take certain financial choices. If you stay put in your state of socialization, there are sure some financial choices you will not take because they inform a choice between high and low risk. I've discussed the place of psychology of money because the behaviors and socialization are linked, and they are linked with the choices, and money makes all of them happen. Again, without going into too much of that, where's the place of financial planning? I'm happy I'm talking to doctors and you know how the brain works or how the mind works. There's the place of putting an objective within the set of 7 items in your RSA. So planning makes it happen. Planning plugs the theme that you want to focus on. Planning doesn't start with finances. It starts with a goal. The process of budgeting is what makes a goal become a financial item. And I'll be handling budgeting last. So that I want to say without any fear of contradiction that anybody who does not have a plan will always end up where they started. The steps for planning starts with putting up a vision. For financial planning, there has to be a financial vision with numbers, not just stories. The level of investment that you want to make, the quantum income you want to make from that investment, and the time period you are willing to wait for that to happen. A statement written that is measurable, that's very specific, time-bound, meets all the criteria of smartness, but must have the quantum money to be invested, the quantum income to be made, and the time period. Once you've done that, you go back to your current situation. Planning is something about the future, and we should not restrict it to who we are or the incomes we have now. We can change those. In economics, we are taught, and I will remind you, that resources are finite. When you are in the short term, you can't change them. But in the long run, you can't change. You can indeed change resources. So when you're planning, don't plan based on what you have today. Plan based on what you want to see. Then you come and look at your current situation and you ask yourself a honorable question. Can I afford to release any money from my current situation? And the answer is absolute yes. Why? Because in our lives, we have a certain amount of waste that we always carry. So by reviewing how you are doing things, and then one step or two ahead in the slides, I'll be showing you that by reviewing what you are doing currently and how you are doing it, if you desire to change, you can and you will change. More importantly, ask yourself, if I were to release 1,000 bob, if I were to release 10,000 bob, and by the way, I have met a doctor who was making 1.6 million a month and was broke. And we reorganized him and he came back to his senses. So it's not a lot of money that makes you not broke. The point is, have you looked carefully at your current situation? Where is that 1.6 going to? Why are you broke at the end of the month? Why are you doing 3 jobs and you can't see the money? So that current situation requires us to address ourselves to where does the money go? Itemize. And then ask the next question. How can I achieve the same thing with a lower amount of money? So if I was spending 150,000 a month, can I spend 100 and still get the same value? That is the issue of waste. There are people who buy the same thing, they buy it for a higher value because they don't look for it at the right place. So once you have that money, that 50K available, that 5K, that 3K, ask yourself, what opportunities exist for me in the financial markets, which is our subject of discussion today, to mix with this money to move towards my vision? And what are the challenges? What are these things that are taking my money away every month, every week, every what? What must I sustain at the moment that I can't do without? And for how long? I call them challenges. So, as I mentioned, determine your financial goal. I'll not go through that today. We did that last time we were here. Then I've just mentioned, address your current situation, second step, and this is where financial planning takes the biggest amount of work to be done, because it requires weight loss, and most people cannot sustain a weight loss program, be it physical or mental. This one is mental. First question you ask, who is in my social structure? Who must I finance their life without choice? Who may I not? Take those questions, get your answers, then you decide how much money was going, how much money will go, and how much money will move towards my goal by way of savings. Step 2, know exactly where your shillings are, both ins and outs, both assets and liabilities. The things you own are called assets. The things you owe other people are called liabilities. Put them on a clear map. I have a map somewhere in slides. I will show you that. So I've summarized this thing by way of a budget. Then I discussed, and I'm still discussing, the social structure has to do with the people that depend on you. Who are these young people? Who are those middle-aged people? And who are these old people? And do they deserve every shilling you're giving them? If you have a kid in number 1, they will eventually reach number 4 before you reach number 9. Someone talking? So if they will reach number 4 before you reach number 9 or 10, it is your responsibility to provide for them as they move from number 1 to that number 4. And in good financial planning situations, you should not be borrowing to meet your regular needs unless you are living beyond your means. You should be borrowing for investment. Sorry, I'm seeing a sign that the internet is unstable. So growing children in number 5 and 6, when you are between the age of 29 and 42, those children are between the age of 8 and 21. Kids are either in number 4 or number 3. And their demands on your money at the highest level possible. So the things you don't catch up with you negatively in number 7 and 8. And upon retirement, is only you and maybe your spouse who have retired. Everybody else has no right to access your pension, because pension is money for Uze, and there are only 2 people who are Uze in that environment, the couple. I've talked about that structure, social structure analysis. The questions are straight. Every child, their age and regular needs. Put it down clearly. Prioritize their needs. Children, their ages and their needs. Your parental dependents, their ages and their regular needs. And any other dependent, their ages and regular needs. Age is important because when people move between ages, as you can see, the demands on your money increases. The lowest being in someone around number 2. The number 1 can be very high. And when they're number 3 and 4, what they are looking for from you are large amounts, but actually conceptually much smaller than they were demanding from you when they were when they were more dependent in number 1. In terms of knowing your financial situations, you should know your income line by line. Where do they come from? Where should they come from? If you are discussing a shield, then there must be a plan. What will I do to create this income from the next period? We are now in November. If you are only, for example, and you desire to earn dividends, then you must invest in a share of a business, whether it's quoted or unquoted. If you desire to earn some interest, you must be having some savings in either a cash instrument, in a bank, in a treasury bill, in a bond, those instruments that pay you interest. So you should have a budget of your income. Where is my income coming from? How much is it? Where shall it come from? Next year, the following year, after next year, in the 5th year, and in the 10th year. And let me summarize this, that if you are 40 years today sitting in this seminar and you are not earning passive income equal to your salary income, then you failed the war for financial independence. You have to start doing things in a new way. Review your expenses, like I've said, line by line, justify them. Look at the situation of your personal use assets. One of the statements I made initially in the Psychology of Money was about the pursuit of fool's game. Personal use assets is a huge element in people, especially between the age of 4 and 7. And it's a big issue. Your investment assets, unfortunately, most people don't spend a lot of time here. That's the subject of discussion today. What kind of investment assets should you be having? So we'll spend half an hour on that. Then your liabilities. Why are you in a circle? You're in a circle to borrow, and a borrowing is a liability. So borrowing should be used to fire investments first, then the investments give you the money to buy personal use assets. That's the part. Again, a discussion for another day, but today we shall be discussing the investments and we're discussing how we can use loans to get it. What are the implications if you should find a lot of your assets in the personal use column and you want them to move to investment column? What is the implication to your income lines and your expenses? And I can tell you, it works. If you own a property, for example, that you are living in the part A as a personal use asset, you have a 4-bedroom or 3-bedroom house and you're single. Really, should you be living in that house or should you be renting it out and living in a smaller one? Those are questions to answer. If you do that very well, you will confirm whether you are broke or not. And if you are broke, you take what you call a waste wash. And in a waste wash, you basically are creating new priorities, supporting set of behavior. You are doing the same things you are doing, you're just doing them in a different way. From a meeting for the farm, you list the expenses which you take on a daily basis. I take once a week, and the expenses I take once a month. Of those daily expenses, the buys, the ones you buy, you also have a list you take every week, like going to a week, the monthly shopping, rent, if you're paying rent, a loan, if you're paying, those are things you pay once in a month. You make a list of all of them. Then you ask the question, how can I do each one of these items in a different way so that I can get the same value while spending less money? And the savings you make in the areas marked XX should then become the source of funding for your future. The longer you take to do this, it's called cutting down the fat. The longer you will take to organize your finances. Don't take so long. It took me 11 years to turn around. You do all those things, you should move from a person with clouds everywhere in his head to a person who has prioritized key things that must receive money first. This is a mental game, not a paper game. You come to prioritize what I do first. When I was in employment, I was making quite a bit of money. 16 years ago, I was earning slightly over 865,000 shillings, but I was broke every month because I was paying everybody's problem as they came. By the time I made the choice to start switching from employment, 13 months before I left employment, I got to a situation where I was now dealing with these few items. And I had to go through coaching to see my own problems. And I'll tell you, the problem here is not money, psychological, is how you prioritize things. So when I put in here this statement here, rationalizing and prioritizing is about that inner fight with your emotions that I talked about. There are a lot of things that we support by emotions. The moment you can fight the war and win it, you will have new priorities and you will have a set of new supporting behaviors that can walk you through to have these few items. Don't have to be the ones I have listed there, but the ones I have listed there are some of which you cannot miss to have in that list. If you are not making any savings, you are unlikely to be able to invest because even borrowing needs you to have some savings. Food is an issue. Accommodation can be rented or otherwise mortgaged. Education of kids and self. For doctors, you have to go to school. Otherwise, it becomes irrelevant. Medical care, especially if no one is providing it, it's very expensive. Ask me, I've had stroke twice. What I've seen is not very interesting from my own pocket. How much money are we spending in communication with everyone else? More importantly, the savings, that haba na haba. And that jembe represents purchase of tools. Tools make money for people. If you don't purchase tools, investments are tools. If you don't purchase tools, you'll work forever. And I think I have seen a few doctors whom I used to look up to when I was young. When they are retiring, I like the way they are doing things. They did buy tools. So as we get down to the business, these are the other steps of financial planning, which I will not discuss today. I'll discuss the implementation bit, especially in the area of investment. So implementing a financial plan presumes you have one. Now, financial plan need not to be a document that is written in a particular fashion, but it needs to be a plan written. It doesn't need to have any financial elements in it. It will always produce money. Just write the plan first before someone is available to help you. Don't move without one. Just write a plan. There's a plan, a format it takes, but write a plan if you haven't met anyone. So key elements in the implementation of a plan is the allocation of the outflows, savings, and investments. So when you are allocating your income to outflows that you must cover, the usual life expenses, to the savings that you must make periodically, and to the investment goals, that is what we typically call a budget. Now, earlier on, I asked you to make a list of the things you spend money on daily, the things you spend money on weekly, and the things you spend money on once a month. Really, those are the things in your budget. So you can do reverse budgeting by starting from what you do, then rationalize it and prioritize it if you didn't have a formal process. The best way to start if you don't have one is just to start from the reverse backwards. So what do I do monthly? What do I do weekly? What do I do? What will I need to do 3 years away? I have a kid who is 9 years today. That girl will require 4.6 million minimum to go beyond Form 4 and to do some college in Nairobi, having gone through average schools. So how do I make that 4.6 million? I can't wait for the day to come, and I hope that it comes. I've got to start doing something towards it. Between age 9 and age 16, 17 and 18, there are only 9 years remaining. So if you haven't started, this kid won't stop growing. That's what it means. So you ask yourself, what am I doing now? How am I doing it? What do I need to do in future? Then you start to ask the question as, where will the money come today before we get any increments to start the journey to that goal? After doing the allocations, you've got to live within the budget, and that is a behavioral. In one of my opening statements, I mentioned to you that if you pursue that fool's game, you've already lost it. And I'll repeat it. Living within budget is a behavioral. Assigning money to a budget is not living within it. It is when the money has gone where it's supposed to go. Regularly, and as I say regularly because it might not go always, there may be those few occasions when the world conspires against you and money must find a different direction, but they cannot go to that wrong direction repeatedly. So that to implement a goal, an investment goal for that matter, the first thing you do is determine the amount of money which you will spend on your basic needs. I have a budget in the slide below. We'll be discussing that. In fact, I should go there right away. I'm not sure if it is very nice. Perhaps I should reduce it a bit. Just a bit so that the edges are a bit clear. I'll come back to that. So you can see in the dark section, those are the expenses that you need to spend every month. Some you do daily, some you do weekly, some you do monthly. Those are the expenses we have to make to sustain our choice life standards. I have met a few young men below the age of 30 living in extensions in Gigiri and paying a rent of 80K. I've also met their age mates. Both of them live in Nairobi. They spend more than the other. That does not mean that the one who lives large is doing better. Doing better is not measured by now, will be measured by how life will look like when you can no longer work. The area that is green is an area around which you need to take certain actions that secure your future. There are savings for investment, there are borrowings for investment, and there are direct investment choices which you have to make. They are marked in the yellow area. And what goes into those yellow sections, it is you who chooses. I've only given you a few examples. So if you have a budget and it doesn't include items that secure your future by way of investing and savings, then you are losing that game I discussed earlier. So that when I go back to determining the amount of money you spend on your basic family needs, it is those items in black, from food to sanitation. How much do you spend a day? And if you want to go for a holiday, that holiday has to be budgeted for. We are going into December, and there are a number of people who will want to go to the coast, including unusual areas, except deserts. But they didn't save for it. It only costs you about 150 shillings a day per household to save enough money to keep each family member out for 5 days. So there has to be a deliberate intention to save money for that holiday or forever stay away from the holiday destinations, because you'll be spending debt that you don't have, and then like spending your future, and then you pay back what you enjoyed over 5 days. The second step in the implementation of financial goals is determining the cost of your goals. You want to do a house? There's a process for doing a house. First, there has to be land. Two, there has to be an architectural drawing. That costs you money. 3, there has to be a quantity survey estimate of each material required according to your test. And then now that you know that, then ask, how much then do I need to save of my current income if I'm going to achieve it through savings? If I'm going to borrow, how much am I going to take towards paying off a debt that I will take for this? If I'm going to invest directly into it, the way our guys in Kiambu do it, just keep buying stones, then how much will I have to put aside regularly? And then deciding when do they start. So when I'm going to discuss investments, this is the process that ought to have preceded it. There has to be a disciplined approach to how you handle the money first. There's something called regular amount of money available for investment. Just the way you have some 5,000, 10,000, 15,000 that goes into a savings in a circle. Certain investments require that regularity when you are investing. Sorry, I have to remove my camera because I'm seeing a persistent sign of low resources. So the only danger is now it begins to hang. So I will not repeat that discussion there, except when we come to the end of the session, I'll come to it. So in terms of investing skills, which is what is going to take most of our time tonight, it is 7:54. I'm about 20 minutes maximum, 10 minutes rather. Here we are talking about, the first thing is to determine your ability to take risk. How much risk can you take? The point is that any one of us can take some risk. One can take a much bigger risk a month. One can put in 100,000 a month. One can put in 10,000. One can put in 5,000. But all of us need to put those things aside. So that is determined by your current age. When you're younger, your income is lower generally. But from small investments, that's the benefit of being young. You buy assets that we call long-term assets because they will pay you in future. Those of us who are in their 40s and 50s, you are here when Equity Bank was floated in the NSE. You saw how Equity Bank grew from 15 bob to 150, was split back, grew again to 150, was split again. Investments whose values increase but don't pay you dividends are investments suitable for young people. Young is anyone below the age of 40. The moment you start breaching 40, you are now entering the other side of the equation. You've not become a senior citizen, but your circumstances are changing in the family manner. So that changes your dynamics. Your current financial situation, the assets that you own and the liabilities you've taken to own them. If you're young in profession, a young doctor anywhere below the age of 35 or in their late 20s when you just start work, then starting right is very important so that you don't have to undergo weight loss. Starting right is by avoiding certain excesses. And you do so by engaging in investments that take away that excess money. When you have excess money, you will always engage in excesses. So if you start to do things that take away that excess load of money from your pocket, then you're almost broke every month, but you're doing things. You are different from someone who is cash rich, but is not doing anything. So your current situation in terms of assets you've acquired and how you have funded them, has it left you with some money to make advance somewhere else? How much disposable income is available? And disposable income in the present situation is our gross income, less pay as you earn, less pension, less NSSF, less NHIF, and less the housing levy. Whatever is remaining, divide by 2. Only 1/2 of that money should cover all your loans. And I mean not just your personal income from the payslip, but also income that you make from local income. Put it all together. You should not expose yourself to more than half your income in terms of all the loans, unless you're going to live alone for a long time. When you have put yourself in the family way, some dynamics change with children. They change your numbers. So you may have what looks like a lot of disposable income, but it's also demanded by some people that must take it every month, so it's not really available. The other point of consideration before you buy any asset or allocate an amount of money per month is, do you have enough money for safety to absorb any emergency without you having to sell the investment you purchased? So then you can engage in the purchases of the assets. How long do you intend to wait before what you are doing monthly and periodically gives you the expected return? I mentioned, and this should worry anyone, if you have a kid in grade 4 today who is going to grade 5, please set aside 4.6 million bare minimum for their education under CBC. And I've just used Riara, I've just used the school called Kianda. I've just used their rates as an example for girls to get that 4.6 million. It's not anything big, it's just a normal school in Nairobi. The moment you go to the higher cost schools, you spend more money. So how long? You only have 9 years. If you have 9 years today, that girl has only 9 years to be at the age out of high school. And then the other 4 years are in college. So you have a maximum of about 13 years to do everything. So how much do you have and at what rate of return? So that will decide the kind of asset you buy. Do I buy a bond? Do I put money in a rental house? Do I put money in a money market? The rate of return will be a key driver. So when you're sitting before any financial advisor, you should know how to get the goal you want, because the asset that is suitable for you is determined by your own expectation. Linked to how long. The assets in higher rates also have higher risks. So the moment you choose rate of return in the early is the probability of expected return, or indeed the probability of getting it. It is not an absolute loss. You have any preferences, any inhibitions in cigarettes or alcohol? A Muslim might not want to invest. Those assets are a lot of them. They are already outside your spectrum. So when you're sitting before any advisor, investments are right for me. Remember your age back there. Remember your current financial position. Are you already overcommitted? How much disposable income is available given your needs? How much emergency funding do you have to absorb your losses? How long are you prepared to wait? What rate of return then must you have to achieve your goal given that time that you have to wait? By choosing that, you choose the side of the risk factor. You now are narrowing your selection to a few assets that meet your spectrum. If you have any special preferences, they remove certain assets from your spectrum. And eventually you have to decide whether during the life of this asset, you will require some liquidity So if you had $1 million, Bob, to invest today, do you invest all of it in one asset, or how do you split it in a manner that should you be hit by some unexpected wave, then you can sell the liquid portion and use and maintain the illiquid portion? How to invest would have to ask questions and get good answers. So that amount available for regular investment is a key number. Just the way you have a regular amount available every month to take the circle. If you're going to be investing from your incomes directly, then that regular amount is necessary. For example, if you are buying shares, you don't buy shares once. What you need is to have 3 or 4 counters that are right for you. Once they have been allocated, these are the kind of counters you'll buy during this year until the change is made. Then you need to buy those counters regularly, whether prices are going up or going down. So that you always have the average price. It is a question of trying to time when they are down and when they are up, you sell. Is a question of buying as you go when things fit. But generally, we don't invest in shares for the short-term earnings. So where then are the likely areas where you'll invest? In Kenya, you will not get is what we call quoted financial assets. Quoted in the sense that you can find the information publicly. Treasury bills and bonds are quoted weekly by the central bank. Infrastructure bonds are only a type of bonds that are treasury in nature. Corporate bonds are bonds issued by a corporate like Safaricom or East African Development Bank. Quoted shares are the same ones you see on the screen. There is more money in the unquoted shares, but there is a lot of learning in knowing how to invest in that. It's not something for everyone. You have to be willing to learn. I have seen a doctor, one of your very foremost KMA members, make money in shares. When I was a young man, he made quite some money from shares. I wish one day you ask him to come and talk to you about that. So unquoted shares are those companies that may be in the stock in what we call OTC, even be in the stock. It could be a business like Lancet that is owned by a medical business. You just own a share of it. That is unquoted business. So the information is not public. If the information is private. So the extent to which you get to understand that business is what now drives whether you will make gain from it or make a loss from it. Different forms, but I've also added in there the income rates, and there's also what's called the D rates. I should have added it, the I rates and the D rates. The income rates are the real estate investment trusts, but which pay you income periodically. The D rates are the development rates. You must be aware that when these guys were building this mall in Karen, I'm forgetting the name, the one on the side heading to Dagoretti, they raised money, about $1 million bob from each person who was investing on a bare minimum. And then they sell them all. And as they had 3 million, basically you made $1 million a year. D rates are very good investments for people who are liquid, but you need to understand how these things work. So I would appreciate if you take your time to sit with an investment advisor to walk you through each item on the good side of it, what they do and what they don't do. Bank deposits is for anybody who wishes to put money in a situation that the value does not change. Put 100,000, you'll get back 100,000 plus interest. Treasury bills the same. You put 100, you never lose, you only get the interest. Unit trusts, some of them, in fact, 4 of the 5 unit trusts are the type that the value does not remain the same. Only the money market fund is like a deposit. The others, they take away some commission immediately you put money in. So you must wait long enough for that commission to be and the movement in interest bills and bonds, especially in this time when the government is borrowing a lot, have got very good interest rates. So anybody who has excess money that would like to earn some good interest, this is the time to put your money in the treasury instruments. Until, of course, the president turns around the situation, things are such that the government will be borrowing week in, week out, and the interest rates that are sustaining will sustain. The moment you see the central bank base rate has gone up, you expect that for a while they shall be in a high interest period, and that shall sustain for a while. Get in, get your money, get out. Alternative investments are more difficult to understand, but are better. And for younger people, you put your money first in safety areas first, items under number 1. For the people in the middle ages or people tipping away from young and now have a little bit of liquidity put together, alternative investments require big amounts to invest in generally. These are investments in other people's businesses, in startups, things that are not understood. There are a number of instruments that fall under alternative investments. You hear the Kenya Power Pension Fund offering you an opportunity to buy a preferential shares. You do that. Those are under alternative investments. So they are very on the edge of the risk. The risk is higher, but then you cannot understand them if you never seek to understand them. So it is important that we ask ourselves the question that how do we get in there? Call retirement debt, whether you are employed or otherwise, you will not be able to go to work. Recognize that debt is ahead there and start doing things when you have the smallest check in life. Start to set aside some money. Save and invest that money along the path of your life. If you make small savings, you make small investments until you are able to put them together, get into one big investment until again you break that, and that we keep multiplying the size of the investment and the size of your income, and your ability to take risk increases. To do nothing is to lose the war. Like I said, if you're young, you invest in long-term assets. Your focus is how to make capital growth. Bob and selling for 30 is bright flow earning assets, because what we need is to use that cash flow to borrow more money to invest in more assets. Please learn to borrow. Don't fear borrowing. Just borrow wisely. As you get into the ages above 55, we call that senior citizen, but the early phase, retirement careers, including continuing investments in the cash flow producing assets, but now stability is important. You are now beginning to enter the age where you need money to come every month. At 65, KRA pronounces you old. You don't pay taxes anymore. What you need from that age is regular income. Assets that you hold should always pay you regular income. It's bonds that pay regular incomes. Treasury bills that pay regular income. It is issues of if you own any share, there are mature shares like BAT, mature shares like breweries, and in very small proportion that pay dividends every year. So that when we reach there, we only have questions to ask, and then we can call it a day. But Tari, do you want to take that back?
Yes, I can. Yeah, so thank you very much, Patrick, for that enlightening presentation. I always find your presentations quite informative because you keep them simple and easy to follow. So before we proceed to the Q&A, I'd just like to acknowledge that in the house we have other board members who are in attendance. We have the CEO of the SACCO in attendance, and we also have the staff who are making this particular webinar possible, primarily from IT, business development, and TIBA. And we'd like to thank them for enabling this particular event to take place. I think as I scout through the questions, probably what I'd just like is just a general remark that financial literacy is one of those things that college or medical school does not confer upon us. So I think for me, I always feel quite happy when I see over 300 people setting aside time to actually make time for this particular thing, because unfortunately, money matters in life, including whether we will be beggars in future. So yeah, I'd like to look at a couple of questions that are yet to be answered. And there's somebody who is asking whether buying or building, sorry, I think my list is changing here. There's somebody asking, is buying or building a house or home an investment asset or a liability for the expenses involved, including mortgage or loan?
In two ways. Number one, there are two answers to that question. When I talk about a mortgage, things are very different. For a mortgage or a loan, things are very different. So I'll answer the first part before I come to that. One, whether an asset is a liability, whether a property is an asset or a liability is situational. It's not wrong for everyone. There is an age at which owning a 350 million house is not a problem. But there's an age where even owning a 10 million house is a problem because your finances are not in the right side of things. So when you have made your money through putting up assets that are producing money for you, what you call passive income, and your passive income is in excess, is higher than your expenses, then it would be right to start owning some assets. But if you are still in the red, then owning a liability is adding more trouble to yourself. Because if I am in the red and I add in a property, be it a car or anything else that is sucking money from me and doesn't give me, I'm in the red, then I am it. You should invest first. The personal enjoyment assets. That is the path to avoiding owning a liability at the wrong time. Because the issue of liability, what time in terms of your income and the balance between your income and expenses are you discussing these things? There are people who have made it in life, and by the way, you'll be very shocked. The few people you know in Nairobi who have made it in life, they don't live in huge houses. They own them, but they own them to rent them. They just live in one of those ordinary houses. So they have too much income that they will never discuss a liability in their life. Even if they were to own such 10 houses in different parts of this world, it would never be a liability in their balance sheet. So I think the guy who is asking that question ought to have told us, what is my financial situation? What's my age? Usually the age and financial situation are correlated. The anonymous guy asking if the rising debt in Kenya and a possibility of default, saying we would like to know about offshore investments. Well, offshore investments is about buying the same things you'd buy in Kenya, you're only buying them in another jurisdiction. You go to the US market, you'll most likely buy into a unit trust, coined by so many different names. So the question is to say, do you understand what drives the value of that asset in the US? First of all, information asymmetry in the developing countries makes the values move slower than they move in the developed world. So offshore is not a bad investment. It's a way of diversifying your risk, but you cannot make offshore your major investment. You would rather even go across to Uganda and to Rwanda and try to buy an asset in Rwanda than run into the offshore market, because primarily offshore, as we understand it, is in the developed markets, whether you're discussing UK or US or the East, but mainly UK, US are the destination of most funds. But you're basically buying the same instruments. Now, the challenge with offshore investments, and I have interacted with a retiree professor, medical doctor, who had 40 million shillings in the offshore market at the time we had our own violence here. The value of his assets fell by 22 million to 18, and he couldn't believe what he was seeing, because he did not understand that even in the offshore market, there were issues that were going on there that were leading to mortgage meltdown. And immediately we had our own violence and the mortgage meltdown followed. His 40 million worth fell down to 18. And he took a loss at a time when he was not supposed to take it, because he didn't understand how things work. So it is important that you understand that the same factors that drive the value of investments here drive the value of investments in that market, and they even drive them faster. So you must keep being actively aware of what is happening. So whether the investment is dollar denominated or shilling denominated is a temporal issue. It's not necessarily long term. However, if you have any excess cash flow in your hands, in a times like where we are, where the shilling is substantially weaker to the dollar, then you should be carrying it in dollars. It's much better to be carrying it in dollars. The question is, where are those dollars? Because they are not in Kenya now. We are having a problem with dollars in this country. I would like to understand unit trusts. I think that's what Dr. Kennedy is saying. How do they work? Unit trusts are very simple instruments. It's like adding watermelon, banana, and an orange in one meal, and you only eat a bit of each. Someone also eats a bit of each. So unit trusts are put together by creating a fund that has bought many different assets, and our assets are the bonds, the shares, the quoted shares, the bonds, and any other asset outside there, so that you create a fund that when you subject it to an environment of, say, rising interest rates, when the bonds are stable, they are not responding quickly to interest rates, maybe shares of a company like Bamburi would be dropping faster. So the bonds will sustain the fund by being more resistant when Bamburi would be falling at the same time. So what a unit trust does is it gives you a chance to buy into a fund, but you only buy a portion of the fund. So you come in, many of you. That's why many of you are shareholders in what you call a unit trust fund. So if it's a money market, you have cash and you have treasury bills largely in that fund. And that cash is kept in bank deposits. So because of the interest rates are higher at treasury bills than the bank deposits, you tend to get 2% higher than if you had the money in the bank. If you talk about a bond fund, you are looking at various bonds forming the fund. Bonds of 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, each with different interest rates. So that at a time when the market is responding well, positively, there's a high interest rate market, you make money. On the reverse, when the interest rates are collapsing, you are actually not going to make money, because bonds also the value of the bond correspond to the direction of interest rates. Bonds that are issued at a lower rate than the market rate, their values collapse. And then bonds that are issued when their coupon rates are higher than what was in the market tend to acquire more value. So knowing that kind of swing game is important in understanding, should I buy a bond fund or not? A balanced fund, on the other side, is a mix of bonds and shares. So that when the bonds are stable, the shares are moving up and down. Shares are the ones that respond very fast to good returns and also very fast to collapsing returns. So they either shoot the value of the fund up or shoot it downwards. Then you have an equity fund that is purely 19 companies. You just buy shares of 19 companies, but the shares are both such that when some are moving higher on the higher side, others are 10 close. That is really what a unit trust is. So what you do is you walk into a British American, you walk into Jubilee, or you walk into an Old Mutual with your 100K, you are buying into a 5 billion or a 50 billion fund. You're just buying a bit of that return. Wow. What would you advise between infrastructure bond and money markets? Infrastructure bonds are long-term investments. They are illiquid. Money markets are funds for short-term investments. If you put money on infrastructure bond, you're going to get good returns. But if the market is not, if the people are not demanding, are not selling and buying quickly, you might be caught up in a scenario where you cannot sell quickly. Like we are in a scenario where people are short of cash today, you might find somebody selling his share in an infrastructure bond that is taking 3-4 weeks to offload it, where yet you need the money today, you have an emergency. So it depends on the amount of money you have and the kind of time you can hold before you get that money back. I discussed the place of liquidity in investments. When you are investing, ask how quickly will I need this liquidity back? So infrastructure bonds are good for returns. But if markets are as dry as they are now, that could lead you into trouble in terms of liquidity, should you need that liquidity urgently. I don't think there's another question there. Provided the tax are increasing through Kenyan government, can we do a webinar on? I cannot discuss that. Someone will have to discuss that. Someone asking, comment on the risk of treasury investments in relation to government defaulting. By the way, a government will lose money. So on a worst case, the government will print money and pay you back. The problem will be when you receive the money, will it have value? And that is a question you will answer at the edge of the road, not today. With rising inflation and the current interest earned on capital, does it make sense to take a personal pension plan? A personal pension plan is not a factor of interest rates. Please don't mix up returns and pension plan. A pension plan is for liquidity. You will need liquidity at one point in your life, whether the returns were low or not. So you might have a small amount of money in a pension plan and make all the money in your investments. There's a day when that pension plan will be to you. Now, if you are the person who has made the money that you no longer require pension plan, you not even in this webinar, you be somewhere else. So if you're still in this webinar, you are in the group who are still trying to make it in life. So it would be pension plan is independent of the levels of return at one point in your life. At that 65 years, yes, we don't pay taxes, any of and above. As we talk about the rating value of Kenya shillings investments, for example, money market, as much as you are getting apart.
As the speaker reconnects, I was saying that for most of for the webinars, they are normally uploaded onto the KMA Sacco YouTube channel. And therefore, if you've missed any webinar or would like to revisit any particular topic, we have a wealth of information on the YouTube channel. So we strongly advise you like it, follow it, and you can preview previous content, and including this one to be uploaded soon.
Can I proceed?
Yes, yes.
Okay. I think the question I'm seeing here next is I mentioned the question about the value of shilling and inflation. Money market funds and infrastructure bond returns are good for people who have excess money, excess liquidity. The purchasing power notwithstanding, it would be irrelevant to hold money if you're not making money from it. So I would rather, if you have some excess money, make money from it. Otherwise, hold that money in foreign currency. Perhaps the dollar around which our currency is pegged to, or the sterling pound, or the euro. The ideal thing, maintain the purchasing power of your fund by putting it either in the right currency, or at least sustaining the purchasing power by getting this high interest rate. Because in an environment of high inflation rate, you get the higher compensating interest rate just to maintain the purchasing power of your fund. Let me put it to you in plain language, perhaps in plain law. Making more money on a treasury bill or bond, you're not making a return. You're basically sustaining your purchasing power. That's purely what you're doing. So whatever you receive plus what you put in gives you the bread which you did not buy when you're at the beginning, with a little bit, slightly more difference. Investment is not putting money in those kind of instruments. Investment is understanding how a property or an asset is making money and then playing big, earning bigger return. That's why investors put in industries that give them 40%, 30% for a while until the market becomes flooded. By the time they come back to put their money on these other instruments, they have made their money there. But it's because they understood the gap. You have to understand. Someone asked, please talk a bit more about D rates and I rates. Real estate investment trusts come in two forms. Those that pay you money regularly and those that will pay you at the end of the investment. The type Stanbic issued that pay you money regularly is called an income rate. That's why you have I. When you put in money into, say, KMA is building some block like the type you have in next you are building in Upper Hill, and then you sell those blocks, and then you distribute the money to those who put in money. That is called a D rate, because the money is used to make a development. You make a return from the growth of the value of your money 3 or 4 years later. I hope that answers you. That's the difference between those two rates. Would you consider buying of an electronic dollars via platforms such as PayPal as a strategy for protecting your value of your money? Where you buy is irrelevant as long as you buy safely. The word is safely. This is to KMA. Can you elaborate on your dividend rates? That's not my question. And I don't think there's any other question that I have not answered. If there is, help me point it out.
I think one is a sub-question of a question that has been asked before, and that is whether T-bills are a better option right now as opposed to T-bonds. I think in the context of still concerns regarding default.
That default thing is neither here nor there, because we are friendly to IMF that is going to bail us out of that default. I don't see us defaulting. Of course, subject to us maintaining good relationships with IMF. Because if we are unable to pay any of our debts, then there we are. So far, we've been able to get money on time to make good our debts. And our debts are not that explosive. They are high relative to the levels of incomes we make as a country. So let's not worry too much about that. Question is this: whether you buy a bond or you buy a treasury bill, if the government was unable to pay its commitments, you will be in the same position. Those are government instruments. So if the government can't pay someone else, what is the value of what they will give you? They will print money and pay you back. But what will be the value of that money, whether it's 10 million bond or 10 million in T-bill? The value will be useless at that point, because the ramifications, I don't know if that word is the right word, but the ramifications of having been in a place of not being able to pay debt would mean that each one of us will lose a portion of their assets, financial assets, because the government will deduct money from you, from your savings account, to pay the debt. You will not be having money in the bank and get it wholesome. All of us will face the same ramifications. So that the difference between holding a T-bill in the face of a debt collapse is irrelevant.
Yeah, and then one is maybe to ask in a slightly different way a question that has been asked. I know that it's beyond the scope of this particular webinar to address all matters tax, but if you could make a comment on like tax efficient, which investment opportunities are tax efficient or can reduce your tax liability?
I think most of doctors' practice are in self-practice. The place to worry about tax is in the way you practice first. What are the allowable expenses that you can carry in the ordinary course of carrying your business as a doctor, as an owner of a clinic, or as an owner of a hospital? They are different. You might need a tax consultant to come to your specific business. But generally, when you own a car in your name, not in the name of the clinic, and you are using the car to go and do the clinic work, you can invoice the clinic for using your car to do it. The ideal is to carry the car in the name of the clinic so that all the expenses are of the clinic. That would be the ideal way. So certain expenses which we are incurring are tax allowable in the sense that they are business expenses that will be subtracted from our sales before we pay tax. That is the place where you begin to play tax efficiency first, before you start asking, what tax gains will I make from an investment? Because if you are only investing $1 million or 2 or 3, and you've lost 30 million through the way you run your business, does it make sense? So the way we operate our business, what are allowable expenses? Those are the ones that you want to know. You are allowed to spend about 6,000 baht per month just buying the usual things you buy for tea, sugar, what have you in the office. Those are things that a basic accountant will tell you, this is tax allowable. The ideal person to do that is to get a tax consultant, preferably an ex-KRA one, to show you exactly which expenses in your specific business, because not all businesses are the same. Even medical businesses are different. So you need to know what expenses are tax allowable. In other words, they are deducted from your income as expenses. After that, now the income you've made from that business, then you now ask, if I'm investing it, where do I get a tax gain? The tax gain you get from investing is basically in withholding tax. That is the small difference. And there are not many instruments here, because the government nowadays, in this particular season, has almost clipped every benefit that we used to have a lot. So for a young person coming into medical practice as an employee, between the ages of starting work and when you own the first house, one of those things you are allowed to do is to save up to 4,000 bob a month from your salary. You remove that money will be removed from your money gross income before it is taxed. So it lowers your pay as you earn tax. So if you are young, you don't own any property already in your name, you are allowed to save 4,000 bob in a registered home savings scheme. And currently there are, I think, 3 only. There's one at Housing Finance, there's one at ICA Investments, and there's one at Saiton. Only those 3 are properly registered investment housing schemes. Then if you take on a life insurance, there's a proportion that used to be 48,000, I think it's now about 60,000 of the premiums that you're allowed to deduct when you're doing your annual tax returns. If you own a mortgage, you get a tax rebate of 12,500 per month, or the equivalent per annum. You remove that from your tax obligation. So those are the things that an employee has, first of all, before they ask now, when I make money, where do I take it? SACCOs have a slightly lower withholding tax than banks. The difference is about 10%. So you find that putting your money in a SACCO, the dividends are not, the holding tax on the dividends is not as high in tax elsewhere. So those just know where all those small gains are in tax. Not big. They are not as big as the tax you lose by not operating your business in a tax efficient manner. So the best advice I would give each doctor sitting here who is running a clinic, before you start 2024, get in a tax consultant to look at your operation and tell you this kind of expense, this kind of expense, this kind of expense will give you some tax benefit. You will save more money in that scenario than the little you are worrying around that is mainly just around the withholding tax differences. Currently, there are no major tax benefits in Kenya other than withholding tax differences.
Thank you so much. I think there's quite a bit of gems in what you have just shared. So I think whoever's heard has heard you. Maybe as we're wrapping up the section, there is somebody just related to the query we've just closed. I'm a freelance doctor who owns a car. Does that qualify as an expense?
When you say freelance, means that you are earning income in your sole name. You are subject to the personal income tax framework. You are not a business. You're operating in a tax inefficient manner. If you're a freelance doctor and you are being paid in the name of a company, it is quite different from a freelance doctor being paid in Dr. Onyango Biero as a name. So those two, one may have a claim, one may not have. Now that you've not told us whether you're operating as Onyango Biero or Onyango Biero and Company, I don't know how to address you, but the company benefits from what I said earlier.
Okay, then I think the last one, I know some questions might pop up, but this is the last question we shall be taking up. Somebody wants you to look into the crystal ball and say how long you think the rising value of the dollar will last. How long you think the dollar will continue to rise?
The rising value of the dollar will last? I don't want to speculate because the drivers of the economy, perhaps let me say it this way. I'm going to explain this in a long way, but I would rather you understand it a long way once and for all. There are two policies that runs in a country. What you call the fiscal policy, basically the national budget and its impact on the economy, and what the central bank does to maintain the value of the currency, otherwise called the monetary policy. So typically, the investment being made by the government, for example, in doing roads, are supposed to put money in the hands of people. This government, not longer than 1 month ago, increased something we call CRR. CRR is the cash reserve ratio. When you put money in a bank, 10,000 bob, the bank that receives 10,000 bob remove 0.25% to take to central bank. That money has been increased to 11% or thereabout. When you do that, what you do, you reduce the amount of credit available in the economy. And by reducing the amount of credit available in the economy, you are making things more difficult. The reverse is what Kibaki did. Move it from 11 to 5, make more money available, create more GDP. So the currency balancing that you see is two ways. One is the natural balancing between our shilling and dollar when they are left to play their own game. But two is the result of central bank injecting either more shilling or taking away more shilling by injecting more dollars. That, what I call monetary policy, is that balancing fact where the CBK comes in to buy either more, to take away shilling or to push in more dollars, depending on where they want to push the balance. That is what the CBK has left for a while to run on its own float. And it's basically because we have low reserves of dollars. So we don't want to play a lot in the balancing of the currency. So I will be wrong speculating and telling you this is the debt CBK will stop having a problem. The truth is our tea, which brings in a lot of dollars, is not being bought because there's war in the three countries that buy the largest amount of our dollars. I mean, of our tea. So without that dollars from tea coming at the quantities they used to come, expect there a prolonged period. What I cannot tell you is how long, because I don't know when war will stop in those countries that are not buying our dollars, and they are not buying our tea, and they also have a problem acquiring dollars. One is Egypt, the other one is Afghanistan. Coffee lost the quantities kitambo. Horticulture is way low. So we are relying on our brothers and sisters throwing in dollar here, as opposed to the three sources, and including tourism, that used to bring in dollars. So the primary source of dollars for this economy have lost lax type. That's the word I can use. You cannot estimate the impact and time unless you sit in the treasury where you see all the numbers. I don't sit in that treasury anymore. My days there were 16 years ago. So with that, I can only tell you, like I am sitting, sit and wait for you.
Thank you so very much. We've come, I think, to the end of tonight's session. I will be handing over to Dr. Gota Kuno to make closing remarks. And my appeal to the attendees, as you exit, please remember to fill our survey so that we can improve on the offerings that we have. Dr. Akuno?
Good evening, members, and let me take this opportunity to thank Mr. Wameo for always sparing time to come and join the members of KMA Sacco as we try to navigate the challenging issue of trying to craft the financial future for our members through targeted investment in knowledge that improves the financial well-being of our members. And I want to thank all our members who spared their time to come in and for participating very actively, asking questions. As usual, it would be remiss if I don't thank our staff who always work very hard on the background, the CEO and his entire team for always ensuring all this is put together. My biggest word for all of us is start early and start the way you mean to go on. One of the most difficult things we go through as the members of your board running your SACCO is when we have to keep signing off withdrawal forms. Then you call the doctor aside, you try to engage them. most likely a doctor who is working for government has gotten an opportunity to go for postgraduate studies. So the doctor feels like when I'm studying, I'll not be able to locum as much. So I don't want to have a loan. I don't have money to save. And I would strongly advise that we just make the adjustments, but when we are making those adjustments, let's not try to kill saving, because eventually that postgraduate will come to an end. And it would be much better if you are saving at even the very minimum monthly saving is much better than withdrawing completely and having no saving, than coming out of that postgraduate and starting to rebuild afresh. Whatever we save in the circle gives us a platform upon which we can now build and then diversify into other investment opportunities. With those very many remarks, I want to wish all of us a good night. This presentation is CME accredited, so you will be able to get your CME points for those who are members of the Medical Practitioners and Dentists Council. As usual, keep it KMS Circle. Good night.